March 8th, 2022, and a very special date for women. Happy International Women's Day. I could go out and reel out all the visions and the missions and everything that is expected to change in our world as we celebrate the day. My name is Esther Kalu. Joined virtually with our guest this morning, Emeka Nwatu, a public affairs analyst. Thank you for joining us on the newspaper review this morning.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you.
Yes. We made autonomous
to some extent. To some extent, we made autonomous, and then the federal government
have to do with education. Right. Let's start with the 2029 agreement between the federal government and ASU. I'd like us to start with that this morning because it looks like that's the basis of the renegotiation right now. 4 issues for renegotiation I see is conditions of service, funding, university autonomy, and academic freedom, and other matters. So what exactly do you think is going on? Why are they still going? Is this too much for the federal government to do?
Okay, yeah, so thank you once again for having me. This issue of education is a very, very critical and an important subject matter because the survival of our country, lies in its ability to produce applied theoretical knowledge in science, technology, humanities, innovation, and entrepreneurship. So it is very critical. And you see that everything goes back to education, So I also understand, because I have studied that 2009 renegotiation, and for the that tripartite committee that was able to come up with that document, which is the renegotiation as it were. So, but what are we saying? We are saying that a lot of indicators were fixed up in that document, which you have been able to set in your agenda now this morning. But I think that the government is, particularly the federal government, is not too comfortable with some of the demands, particularly on the part of ASU, for insisting that the funding for government on the side of government should be pegged at 26% budgetary allocation, which to that effect is that all the appropriations coming into law should give this higher, so much emphasis on education. So that's one of the critical areas that I believe, and I think, and I know that federal government is considering changing or kind of reviewing, because they are not willing to meet to that standard, So, and then when you talk about education, the university autonomy and the academic freedom, I mean, it's to the effect that universities want to, want to take charge of their welfare, the welfare of their workers. And if you know, there is something they call the IPPIS, which over time universities have not appreciated, because to them it is like guarding, or it's like teleguiding the operation, the activities of the university. The universities are saying that they want to be autonomous. They want to be able to receive their votes, money votes, and then decide how it will be spent. And but with the coming into there of that what they call that single treasury account, the TSA, it is not it doesn't augur well with the operations of universities. So they are saying they want to be excused from that remuneration or payment structure. So some of these things are not too much of things that cannot be done. I
Okay,
mean,
talking about it not being too much for the government to do, let's look at funding. I'm looking at the issues for renegotiation now. I'm seeing
okay,
funding and university autonomy. So if you're asking, and I'm looking at the sources of funding, and some of
yeah,
them are coming from the government. So if you're
yeah,
asking the government that you want to stand as an autonomous entity, but you want funding from them, does it not look contradictory? Looking at, it's like you're asking for freedom, but you want to be paid still. Don't you feel that this is somewhat, contradictory as a stand
yeah.
from
And
from ASU now?
the kind of freedom that we are looking at here
Hmm.
is the kind of freedom that institutions like the judiciary and local government have been asking for over time.
Okay.
You know, funding will always come from on the part of the government. I mean, this is the primary business of government. To be able to take care of welfare, which by extension includes the academic and educational life of a country. So you consider the education tax fund, you consider the petroleum development tax fund, and then you're looking at patronage from private sector, and maybe transfer of landed properties. All those things are statutory things. But when ASU is talking about freedom, they are saying that if government in itself is in the chain of funding, like in the chain of how the funds are being managed, it will downplay, it will slow down the growth of government institutions, because over time, uh, ASU and even other stakeholders have believed that government has not really shown or demonstrated that capacity to manage most of these institutions, particularly for education. So release funds, ASU is not saying that all the money must come from the part of the government.
Okay.
If you study the agreement, they've been able to identify areas of funding,
Hmm.
and that document did not cast all the burden or convey all the funding source on government.
Okay.
Government will play their part. Government is not even going to do just beyond say the 26% that that UNESCO has pegged for education. So that is very critical. And then education trust fund, petroleum development trust fund, those things basically are not necessarily government funding, because those are what business entities are supposed to commit to the development of education, particularly in their host communities or within the environment where they do business.
Hmm.
So this is something that is very liberal, something that is very easy to understand. So there is no mystery behind how education should be funded in Nigeria. I
Okay.
mean, we have templates, global templates.
Hmm.
So all they need to do is just to look at this with other counterparts, or try to do a peer review, which I know they've done over time, and implement this thing. We need sincerity on the part of public players, governance players,
Okay.
government institutions, to commit loyalty, to commit purpose, sincerity of purpose to the development of education in Nigeria. Every of these persons
Hmm.
that keep getting involved in this frustration, or in this process that undermines education, are
Hmm.
products of this system.
Let me
I mean,
let me let me butt in. Let me
you're
butt in
supposed
here.
to, you're
Let me.
supposed to develop the system that gives back to you, and you give back in return. That's common sense, and that's how Nigerians should think and
Well,
be.
if we have to say that, you know, the system birthed them and so they should be loyal to the system, it may not be exactly. I hear some of my lecturers then say things like they had people who washed their clothes when they were in school, they had free meals. You know, most Nigerian graduates did not meet any of that. My Nigerian graduates in maybe their 30s and 20s and those in school right now did not meet free meals and any of that. So if you're saying that they should be loyal to that system, there's probably a new system. There was also a call for their children to be able to be mandated to attend these public schools, but that is a conversation that we'll have some other time. I want us to get into
that education bill that was supposed to mandate has not died a natural death. It has to be reconsidered because that's part of what will strengthen the education system. I mean, by the time you mandate them or you give them some marching order to ensure that you must be in the public space, these are few things that you must adhere to. It will bring on board the square pegs in square holes. You know, so if you don't have any reason of being in the public space or being in civil governance, you will not come on board. So I believe that those of us in the civil society will continue to advocate, to continue to press that particular law, that bill, should be passed into law.
Okay, before we move on to other matters, still linking to education, I want us to connect a headline that I saw this morning on Punch newspaper: strike, caution ASU, Ngige urges NLC. Now, this matter, as we're speaking, we have information that he is mandated by law to transfer the disputes between the ASU and the federal government to the industrial courts following the refusal of the union to return to status quo. But I'm looking also at the file talking about the 2009 agreement, and in the area where we have other matters, I can see that one of the other matters that is important for them to talk about is the periodic review of the agreements. So even this 2009 agreement, in the agreement, is supposed to be reviewed. Now, the Minister of Labour and Employment is saying that he's mandated by law to transfer disputes to the industrial courts. Isn't this something that is going to stall this matter longer than is expected? Don't you see this as going too far?
Yeah, I mean, federal government in the past have not prioritized education. Exactly. You know, so universities matter. I mean, generally, it is best practice that when you enter into industrial agreements, there must be certain clauses that allows parties to periodically review that agreement. You know, so that's best practice. You know, globally. So, but for them to now make recourse to the court, it shows that there is no sincerity ab initio, you know, for the enforcement or the implementation of that agreement. You know, so saying that you should go to court, I mean, everybody understands how the judicial system, or sometimes quote and unquote more like the drawback as to how our judicial system operates. I mean, you telling them to go to court and start instituting processes and motions, I mean, that in itself would keep that matter perpetually unended. I mean, and it will keep stalling the process. So I am not in support of the recourse to the National Industrial Court. Although I appreciate that that process, that institution is statutorily for industrial disputes, you know. But why would you even go to the court when these are clauses, these are terms that were interpreted to parties, and everybody appended signature? So what I think should be done is not legal battles and all of that, because that would slow down and undermine ASU and maybe the students who are in the system. I mean, frustrating their studies and all. So
All right.
federal government should implement. You cannot implement absolutely, but you can implement in phases. This is funding. I mean, we keep shouting that the cost of governance is habitually high in Nigeria. Is habitually high. Why releasing votes for frivolities, for luxuries, for public officers when we can commit a huge chunk of those funding for the academic needs of our children or our students.
Talking about academic needs now, it looks like our needs have expanded further because we have students coming in batches from Ukraine with the crisis going on there. We have our students coming in, not to say that others that are coming there are not students, are not also among, but let's now look at our students that are coming in and reintegrating them into the system. If you could just do this in about a minute, let's talk about what you think is the best way to put them into the system, because in Nigeria now, public universities are on strike, and Namibia, Ghana, some African countries are already trying to make their students finish up their classes, their lectures, whatever they were studying in their country. So what do you suggest that the government should do to cater for these people? I heard of a dental student who has just 4 months to graduate. So in that kind of scenario, what do you suggest that the government should do to reintegrate these students back into the system?
Well, I believe we have an emergency in our hands.
Okay.
I mean, a huge chunk of students is very, very critical as we speak now.
All right.
And that should arouse the federal government, particularly now we have we have an acting president. I mean, that should be on the table in the next Federal Executive Council meeting. And then ministries like the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs and Welfare or Social Development, that of the Education and Health, or even other critical ministries should be mandated, should be given an order, directing that those students, their needs, should be catered for. And because I also know that usually in our budgets we have contingency funds, so those funding should be unleashed now. Those are not. This is not the time to keep slush funds or keep idle funds that is yet on tap. Let us get access to those contingency funds. There is nothing stopping us. We have diplomatic relationship with some of those neighboring countries, and even the Federal Ministry of Education, I know for sure, has a whole lot of agreements and bonds with global universities, and then they've entered into treaties. So all we need to do, activate all those things, particularly in the Eastern Europe corridor, and see how quickly our people will be integrated into the universities. I mean, and I also appreciate that some of them want to conclude their programs in Nigeria. So we need to review their current status quo and see a way of maybe graduating them in our universities, either the private ones or that are currently on ground, and then see how they can conclude their studies in essence. I mean, those people mean so much to our human capital development.
Exactly. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much, Emeka Nwatu, for joining us on the newspaper review this morning.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Nigeria.
Do have a great day ahead.
Yeah, thank you.
That's where we call it a wrap this morning on the newspaper review. Do not forget, more of this comes back to you at 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. Thanks for joining us on the newspaper review this morning. My name is Esther Kalu. Till I see you again, to stay safe. Bye-bye.